We are live. Hey, how is it going? It is your muscle building coach, Lee Hayward, back again for another live video Q&A on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel. And the way these video chats work is I'm going to be hanging out here for the next hour, answering any questions and topics of discussion that you may have related to exercise and nutrition, any specific challenges you have when it comes to building muscle, losing fat, getting in your best shape, anything regarding your workouts, your nutrition program, whatever, anything along those lines of fitness and nutrition. Type those questions and topics of discussion into our chat window, and I'll do the best that I can to help you out over the course of our chat today. So we got Dan joining in, and I'm going to ask you, Dan, is this coming through loud and clear? Right? I always like to do my audio video check. If it is, just type in a loud and a clear. I'm assuming it is coming through. I'm getting a thumbs up, which is always a good sign, but just make sure. Loud and clear. Thank you. Appreciate it. Got Lee joining in. Lee, another regular for the video chat. Loud and clear. Appreciate it, gentlemen. AJ is joining in. Got a question there. Good stuff. Robert is joining in. Excellent. Appreciate it. As you tune in, let me know, just type your name and let me know you're tuning in. A lot of the people who are tuning in right now are regulars to the video chat, and I recognize the names. But if you're brand new, I want to welcome you. It's always nice to have new people tuning in. And if you are new, just let me know. Type your name and let me know where you're from. And, don't be shy, right? Like, this is a safe and supportive environment here, right? Anything goes as far as the questions go. So feel free to type in your questions or topics of discussion into our chat window, and I'll do the best that I can to help you out over the course of our chat. If I can't help you, then I'll let you know, right? I won't leave you hanging. I'll try and point you in the right direction to somebody who can help. But if I can help, then I'll do my best to do so. All right, we have B Gaines joining in. Welcome. All right, so first off, I have a question that came through from let's see who I got here from. This one was from Andrew. He sent me a message here. Let's just see here now. Where was that? I'm just looking for it here. He sent me a question earlier. Andrew's a regular to our video chats, and he's having some issues. He's having some issues with building muscle. And this was his question. He says, can you discuss this on your live video chat? He says, my squats are improving. He says he's actually added 100 pounds to his squat over the past year, which is huge. That's huge gains. Now, Andrew's a young guy in his first year or so of training, so he's still making those newbie gains, if you will, right? So he's making really good progress. Squat's gone up 100 pounds in the past year, which is phenomenal. He says, but my arms don't grow as quick as my squat. And he says, I actually squats heavier than his deadlift. And that, he says, he thinks it's unusual, but it really depends on your body type. Because some people have bigger squats than deadlifts. And it's due to the body structure, the leverage of your mechanical leverage and everything else. And sometimes you'll see guys who are actually stronger with squatting. Another thing you have to factor in too is how deep are you squatting? Because you can partial squat way heavier than you can full squat. So without seeing him squat, I don't know where in that range he is. Because I see some guys say, oh, I'm squatting 300-400 pounds, blah, blah, blah. And then you watch them and they're doing these little tiny, quarter squats. Whereas someone who can take 300 or 400 pounds and bury it ass to the grass, full Olympic style back squat, like that is way more harder, way more intense, placing a lot more muscle stimulation on the body than doing a little quarter squat with the same weight. So you have to factor that in there as well. But it's not totally unusual to see some people who can squat more than they can deadlift. And it really depends on body mechanics and your leverages and all that kind of stuff. Another thing, too, it could be your grip. Sometimes the grip is the weak link in the deadlift. But anyway, he just wants to know, why is it he's making gains in his lower body and not seeing the gains in his upper body, i.e. his arms? And that's pretty common for a lot of people. And what you're going to find is after you've been training for a particular length of time, you're going to see your body unfold. And what I mean by that is you're going to see your natural strengths, you're going to see your natural weaknesses, and certain things are going to develop faster, certain things are going to lag behind. And that's normal for most people. Very few people are perfectly proportioned and are going to grow equally and rapidly in all their major muscle groups. You're going to see some areas advance more than others. Right? And I'm very similar to that. Like in my early days of training, my legs responded, my back responded, my chest responded. Arms and shoulders are my natural weak link, if you will. It's one area that I really have to struggle to make gains in. But my legs, my back, and my chest, my basic legs and torso, those areas respond really well for me. Arms, not so much. And it could be mostly, it's genetic. That's basically what it is. It's genetic. It's how your body is structured. And it could be just due to muscle fiber layout. Like maybe you have actually more muscle fibers in the legs than you do in your arms. And regardless of how you're training, you're always going to have that weakness. So the legs are going to respond faster than the arms in your case. Now, some people, it's complete opposite. You see the chicken leg syndrome, right? Some guys got really big arms and really skinny legs. And then other people, you might see someone with a really big chest and a really skinny back, or a really big back and a really skinny chest, or really big arms and really skinny chest, or whatever. Like everyone's going to have their own unique challenges. And what you need to do is once you find out what your unique challenges are, what your weaknesses are, is you want to prioritize them. So if your legs are responding really good and you're making easy gains in the legs, then maybe you want to back off the volume and the intensity of your leg training and use that energy to prioritize the stubborn body parts, i.e. the arms. And this is what I did back in my bodybuilding days, because after several years of competing, I found out very quickly that my upper body was lagging behind my lower body, especially the arms and shoulders specifically. So I went on a prioritization phase for those. And I actually wrote a program dedicated to that. And it's available right now. I mean, it's an old school program. I mean, old school by internet internet date, if you will, but it's one that I put together back in the day. It's called Blast Your Biceps. And if you actually go to blastyourbiceps.com, you can actually see that program. It's available right now. It's a digital download. And that was a program that I actually followed as a means to help balance out my muscular imbalances. Now, it's still not perfect. Like my legs and my torso are still naturally stronger than my arms, but I've been able to minimize those imbalances by following that program. And the key principle there is to take your stronger body parts and put them on a maintenance phase. So and then your weaker body parts, you put them on a prioritize specialization phase. So a simple way to go about this: double up on the volume of your arm training and cut the volume of your leg training in half. So let's just say you're currently training all your major muscle groups once a week. All right. What I would do is legs once a week, arms twice a week. And you can even cut back on the volume of that. And the way that I did it is I had 4 workouts per week. And 2 of those workouts would be arm workouts. And then in the other 2, that's when I would hit all my other major muscle groups. So I would kind of combine a chest, back, legs, shoulders together into like somewhat of a total body workout. And I did that twice a week. And it wasn't like 20 sets per body part or anything like that. It was kind of just a condensed version, maybe like 1 major exercise per each muscle group. And then the arm training, that's where I really prioritized this. So I went into detail with that. And I actually utilized the positions of flexion style of training, where I did fully stretched, mid-range, peak contraction. And I utilized one workout was a heavier, lower repetition workout for the arms, and the other one was a heavy. Did I get that right? One workout was heavy, high reps. Sorry, heavy, low reps. I'm getting tongue tied here. It's heavy, low reps, and the other one was lighter and high reps. And the idea was to work the different muscle fibers. So one, you're hitting more of the fast twitch muscle fibers. The other one, you're hitting more of the muscular endurance fibers, and utilizing different exercises. So you're providing a lot of muscle stimulation, a lot of volume, and really dedicating your training to those stubborn areas. So putting the strong body parts on maintenance mode, right? Like not using up your natural recovery abilities for those stronger muscle groups, putting them in maintenance, and then saving all your recovery abilities for those stubborn body parts. And this is a great way to go about training, because you don't want to give everything equal attention if it doesn't need it. Like if you're naturally strong in one area, you can back off there, like just maintain. And then in the weaker area, that's where you want to focus. And then do that for several weeks or several months. Like honestly, I would give it about 3 months to really see a solid change. I mean, a minimum of 6 weeks, right? Like I wouldn't do anything for less than 6 weeks. So it takes at least that long for your body to adapt and respond and to see any type of a progressive change. But it doesn't mean that you have to stop after 6 weeks. Like I would do it for a minimum of 6 weeks. And if you're making progress, seeing gains, keep it going. Keep that momentum going for as long as you can. And if you can, stretch it out for 3 months. And you can make some really good gains with that. So like I say, if you'd like to see a full-on structured program of how to actually implement this, specific for arm specialization, then head on over to blastyourbiceps.com and get yourself a copy of that downloadable program. All right, so that was from Andrew. All right, let's see what else we got there. So now it is crazy hot here again today. I mean, I know we're having record temperatures across the globe, it seems, but today we are really hot. That's why I'm down in my basement, because it's the coolest place in the house, and it's still over 80 degrees in my basement, right? Like it's just sweltering. I'm sweating up my glasses and everything else here. All right. What else we got there? AJ is joining in. He says, I have a quick question. Have you ever given thought to making a cookbook related to fitness? I actually, one of my coaching students, Jeff Samatero, put together a rough draft cookbook, because he's someone who's gone through the Muscle After 40 blueprint, and he's really taken nutrition and healthy recipes to another level. Now, some of them that he's found from other people, some of them he kind of created on his own. Some of them are ones that I had shared with him, recipes that he's then took and made them even better, right? Like he's really got a passion for this, and he's taken it to the next level. And he actually has a rough draft of a cookbook that he put together. I think it's like 30 of his favorite recipes that he included in his fitness and fat loss transformation. So if you would like a copy of that, just send me an email to lee@leehayward.com. Again, lee@leehayward.com. I got my email down in the description if you want to go check it out there. But shoot me an email with the subject line Jeff's recipes, and I'll send you a copy of that. All right, so feel free to do so. And myself and Jeff have actually talked about it. So that's something that we'll probably be working on in the future, actually put together a proper cookbook. But for now, we've put together this, it's like a rough draft of just some of his top favorite ones that he's utilized during his fitness and fat loss transformation. And if you haven't already done so, go through my old videos and check out some of the ones that I did with Jeff Samatero. Like even just in the Muscle After 40 success stories, there's a couple of videos we did. And he's made an amazing transformation. Got a lot of respect. Like he literally only started working out when he came on board with the program. But the gains that he's made, I mean, from losing the body fat and now achieving a body recomposition and just filling out his frame with lean muscle and having that lean athletic physique and a system in place where he can maintain visible abdominal definition year round without feeling like he's going hungry or on a diet. I mean, it's amazing just to see how he's really taken the program and made it his own. And he's helped me now running the whole Muscle After 40 coaching program. And he's really come on side as my right hand man and an assistant head coach. So yeah, check that out, and we'll send you a copy of his recipe guide. So again, just send me an email to lee@leehayward.com. And I will email you that, and just put Jeff's recipes in the subject line so I'll know what you're talking about, and I'll know that you've been watching this video. All right, who else we got there? We have J.E. joining there. He says, hit that like button, everybody. I appreciate it. Thanks, J.E. Smash the like button. Dario's joining in. Dario's a regular to the chat as well. He says, what nutritional guidelines would you recommend for someone who wishes to maintain their level of body fat, muscle mass while remaining active? What nutritional guidelines would you recommend for someone who wishes to maintain their level of body fat and muscle mass while remaining active? Eating for what it is that you're doing. And this is basically what I'm doing now. I mean, my main focus is one, I just want to maintain my current size. In fact, I wouldn't even mind losing a bit of size, right? My main priority in terms of fitness is maintaining my strength and mobility and all that, but I'm really focusing on improving my cycling. That's something that I've been doing now over the past year or two. And over this past year, I've really made some big strides with that. So that's my main priority. And what I do is I eat to fuel my activity. So based on what I'm doing that day, it depends on how much I eat that day. So if it's a low activity day or an active recovery day, I'm not going to eat that much. You know, I'm going to focus on like protein and veggies and just kind of keep it to a minimum. But on the days when I'm very active, then I'm going to eat a lot more food to fuel that activity. And that's what I would recommend for someone who wants to maintain and focus on their physical performance, right? Eat to fuel what it is that you're doing. And this is a different mindset compared to the typical bodybuilding nutrition, especially bodybuilding nutrition from a fat loss point of view, right? Like with bodybuilding and fat loss, i.e., cutting, contest dieting, all that kind of stuff, the mindset is just deprive yourself, starve the fat, and just get as lean as possible, and the hell with physical performance. Like it's the mindset with a competitive bodybuilder when they're dieting is just, hey, I'm going on the crazy low carb restrictive diet, you know, the boiled chicken, the broccoli. I'm going to do endless amounts of cardio. I just want to burn the candle at both ends, and I just want to get as lean as possible, deplete the body. And if my strength suffers, so be it, right? Because bodybuilding is not a physical sport, right? Yes, there's a lot of physical activity goes into it, but the sport of bodybuilding, like when you actually get on stage to compete, it's nothing physical. I mean, I'm not saying that it's easy, like getting on stage and competing and posing and all that. It's still physically demanding, but you're not judged on your physical capabilities. It's not like who's the strongest, who's got the most stamina, who's none of it's who looks the best in their underwear. Right? That's what it is. It's a beauty competition for men standing up in their underwear. Who's got the best body standing up in their underwear? I.e., your posing trunks, right? It's not technically your underwear. You get up in your posing trunks, but whatever division it is, like if it's open bodybuilding, if it's classic physique, if it's physique with the board shorts, like whatever, it's still like who looks the best standing up in their shorts compared to other guys in front of a panel of judges and an auditorium of spectators. Like it's not who's the strongest, who's the fastest, who's got the most stamina. It's none of that stuff. It's not a physical sport. It's just who looks the best, and is very subjective, right? I mean, I respect bodybuilding for what it is, but it is a super subjective sport, right? I mean, it's kind of weird from that point of view. And depending on your genetic structure and your makeup and everything else, like you can bust your ass and do everything you can. And if somebody just shows up who's a little bit leaner, a little bit bigger, a little bit fuller, a little bit more handsome, a little bit whatever, like they can kick your ass just because they're, you know, a little bit better in that regard. So it's a weird sport. Whereas other sports, it's like, okay, who lifted the most weight? Who scored the most goals? Who ran the fastest? Who performed the best? Who actually did the most, you know, performance, regardless of how they looked, right? It's like it's a different mindset. So bodybuilding is more or less a beauty competition for who looks the best in their shorts. So it's a weird mentality. And a lot of times when people are training for that, it's just deplete yourself at all costs. And the mindset is like, I'm going to suffer it out, right? Whereas athletic performance, it's a different mindset because you can't suffer it out and deplete yourself, because when you deplete yourself and you don't fuel the body, you don't nourish it, your exercise performance suffers. And if your exercise performance suffers, then your performance in whatever sport you're doing suffers. So like if a power lifter is trying to get ready for a powerlifting meet and they starve themselves trying to make a weight class, their strength is going to go down. So they have to be very particular about making weight classes. Like they want to keep their strength and energy high while still slowly trimming off body weight. Same with other sports. Like you see this in any sports, whether it's boxing or MMA or something like that, or if physical sports like team sports or whatever, running, racing, endurance sports. Nutrition is there to fuel the activity that they're doing. So it's a different mindset. You're eating with a purpose to perform better. Whereas bodybuilding, a lot of times it's deprive yourself to get as lean as possible so that you look good, regardless of how you perform. Right. So it's a different mindset. And the way you eat for sports performance is totally different than the way you would eat to just get six-pack abs at all cost. So for people who are focusing on their physical performance and simply maintaining their body weight, you eat for the activity you're doing. So on those high activity days, nourish it. I would rather you eat more and burn more and fuel the machine versus trying to deprive it. And this is the area that you're seeing big strides, especially when it comes to sports performance, nutrition all across the board in different athletic endeavors. And I think this is what's really taking things to the next level is, fueling the machine. And what you'll find a lot of times, especially like in endurance sports, it's not just the post-workout nutrition, like which is very popular in bodybuilding, but it's pre and intra-workout nutrition that can make or break it, especially for long duration sports. So it depends on what it is that you're training for, how you would go about structuring that. Like prime example, last weekend, I went on a group ride and we did a 203-kilometer ride. It lasted, I think it was over 7 hours of moving time. Now the total ride itself took longer than that because we had a couple breaks along the way. But total moving time was over 7 hours. And during that ride, I burned somewhere in the vicinity of 5,500 calories. So the secret to being able to do that, like a lot of people think, oh man, you got some stamina and endurance to do that. But the secret to being able to perform and sustain your energy for such a long duration is pre and during workout nutrition. So eating before you're hungry and drinking before you're thirsty and staying on top of that throughout the entire ride. Staying on top of it. Because if you get to the point where you become dehydrated and you become hungry, it's over. You blew your doors and you're not going to be able to sustain it. You're going to just run out of energy and bonk. So you have to stay on top of it. And it starts, like, obviously it starts before the ride even begins because you want to fuel up beforehand. But even within the first hour, like you got to be slamming back calories, you got to be slamming back fluids, and keep that up throughout the entire duration of the ride in order to sustain the high energy levels. Whereas the bodybuilding mentality, a lot of times you see people doing fasted workouts and depleted workouts, and they're trying to just deplete themselves and burn up as much calories and stored body fat as possible. And yeah, that can work for short duration workouts and work for just quickly losing weight. But from a performance point of view, it's not the way to go. So it's like chalk and cheese. And I've really learned a lot more about well-rounded nutrition since I've started prioritizing cycling and getting around different types of athletes. Because I got to be honest, like for me, I spent years in the bodybuilding gym bubble where like only people and athletes that I associated with were bodybuilders and gym goers and people who were in similar sports, like bodybuilders and powerlifters and that circle, people who worked out in a weight gym. And the nutrition and the mindset and the training is very, very, very niched down. But then when you get outside and you're into other sports and activities, like you're getting around cyclists and runners and triathletes and people who are in different avenues, it's like, even though we're all physically exercising, it's a totally different world, right? It's like chalk and cheese. And like some of the supplements that you would see in endurance, like you would never see it in bodybuilding. Like I remember I was looking for energy gels, like they're so common in running and endurance sports and stuff like that. I went to the local supplement store, which is a bodybuilding supplement store, and I went in there asking about energy gels, and like the guy behind the counter had no idea what the hell I was talking about. I mean, here he is, like, you work in a freaking supplement store, like this is your business, and you have no idea what I'm talking about because it's an endurance supplement versus a bodybuilding supplement. So I mean, it's when you kind of broaden your perspective and look at the bigger picture, it's amazing, and it really helps to give you a better, well-rounded view of it. And I have a much more deeper appreciation of of sports nutrition, having delved into different types of sports, from the bodybuilding, from powerlifting and strength sports, to now long distance endurance sports. And it's, it's a very, it's unique depending on what it is that you're training for. But like I say, I can go on and on about that, but I'm just going to leave it at that. If you have any other specific questions related to this, Dario, feel free to email me. And again, my email is down in the description. We can chat about it offline. All right, moving on before I get caught up in too many of these questions. We have Gabriel joining in. Says, hope it's going well. Says he's doing push-pull legs. He's working a full-time job. He's quite insecure about how and when to train abs. Currently 94 kilograms, 177 centimeters, and 23% body fat. And he prefers the classic look. You can train abs literally with every workout if you want. And you don't have to go in there and have an ab day, right? Like, oh, it's chest day, it's back day, it's leg day, it's ab day. No, like, you just throw in some ab work with your other workouts. Like, that's all I do. I mean, in fact, with my workouts, they're kind of total body workouts anyway, but I usually throw in 1 or 2 ab exercises with each workout. That's it. And I like to vary it up. Like, I'd like to work the entire core. So, I mean, I'll throw in exercises for the upper abs, exercise for the lower abs, exercises for the obliques, exercises for the lower back. So I want to hit the entire core, like the entire belt. Think of all the muscles around your midsection. Think of that as like you're building a natural weightlifting support belt, right? By building up all those support muscles. And your abs and core, they're basically stabilizer muscles for your torso, right? That it's not a major muscle where, like, you're trying to set a 1 rep max sit up or something like that, right? It's not a muscle that you want to build bigger and stronger for the sake of, like, building a bigger, stronger muscle. Not like, hey, I want to bench press 300 pounds, or, I want to, squat a certain weight, or I want to do this, or I want to pull a 1 rep max deadlift. And, like, your abs don't have that same function, if you will. They're stabilizer muscles for your torso, for your core. So you can train them with higher volume, more frequency. And what I mean by higher volume, higher repetitions, I should say. Higher repetitions, more frequency, and it doesn't have to have its own dedicated day. So, like, in your case, you can throw it in with your workouts. Now, depending on how much you want to prioritize your abs and how difficult you find ab exercises will depend where you do it. If you find it really hard to do ab exercises, like maybe leg raises and different types of sit-ups and crunches and planks and all that, if it's really hard and challenging, maybe you want to do it early in the workout when you're fresh, right? Get it done and then you utilize that, right? But then if you're really strong with those exercises, maybe you could save them at the end for a finisher. I kind of err towards doing them at the end of my workouts as a finisher. That's when I usually do the majority of my abdominal workouts. Now, sometimes I'll change it up and might do it early on in the workout, but more often than not, it's a finisher that I'll do at the end. And I'll throw in, basically just some exercises for the frontal abdominals, for the lower back, and then usually doing some sort of twisting or rotational work for the obliques to just help well round the core. And it's a great way to finish off the workout. But that's what I would recommend. Like, don't overthink it. Just do it, right? It doesn't take that long. And it doesn't take a lot of volume, like a few sets of work for the frontal abdominals, a few sets work for the back. I mean, that could be like hyperextensions or something along those lines. And then for the obliques, any type of twist or rotational exercises, right? I mean, like, and you could do them very fast. Like, you could even do it like in a circuit fashion, like a set of ab exercises, set of lower back, set of obliques, and just go through it a couple circuits of each, and you basically got your abs done. And if you did that with each workout, you're doing 3 days a week, push-pull legs, boom, your abs are covered. So you don't really need to overthink it. Just do it. And another thing, you could even do some of this stuff at home as well, right? Like, ab exercises, like, a lot of them are body weight related. So, I mean, even on your off days from training, or if you want to do some extra stuff at home, planks and crunches and leg raises and all that kind of stuff, you can do a lot of that stuff at home. And if you just go to my YouTube channel and do a search for like Lee Hayward abdominal workouts or Lee Hayward home workouts, you'll see a whole bunch of different videos that I made showing some home ab workouts that you can do. All right, moving on. We have Daughter of Truth. It says, nice channel. It just popped up on my suggestions for some reason. You look great. Happy Friday. Well, welcome to the video chat. Glad to have you tuning in, and always nice to have new people joining. So glad that we popped up in your video suggestions. We have Man from Earth. I hope we're all from Earth. That's his username, Man from Earth. He says, no matter how much effort I exert on the elliptical, I seem that I cannot get my heart rate over 120. What's going on? First off, the heart rate monitors on a lot of the gym equipment could be hit or miss, right? So I don't put a lot don't overemphasize the heart rate monitor on the elliptical at the gym. I was using one the other day. I was actually the treadmill. That's what I was using. I was using the treadmill at the gym the other day, and it was saying my heart rate was 198. And I'm like, there's no way in hell my heart rate's 198. I'm walking on the treadmill. I'm not even gasping for air. I'm talking to my wife who's on the treadmill next to me, and I was holding the handles, and it was 198. Like, I know what that kind of intensity and heart rate is like, because I've done it in like road racing when I was cycling and stuff, like get my heart rate really high. And I mean, when my heart rate is truly high, like I'm not able to just relax and casually carry on a conversation and yada yada. Like it is all out max efforts, huffing and puffing and pure focus and intensity. So like sometimes it's off the charts. Other times I've used the try to get the heart rate reading on the machine and it won't read at all, or it's ridiculously low or whatever. So like kind of take it with a grain of salt. I mean, it's nice when they are somewhat accurate. And what I actually use, it's called a Wahoo ticker. This is the brand, but it's a chest strap heart rate. That's when I go for cycling rides, I use it. And it's when it's working, it's pretty accurate, right? And you put it right there in the center of your chest and it can get a good reading of the heart rate. But those machines at the gym, there's so many variables that can play. I mean, obviously the sweat and the dirt can build up on them, and that can have an impact on whether you get a reading. Like even with my my chest strap monitor, for a while there, it was acting up. It wasn't giving me accurate readings. And I was just wondering, like, what the heck's trying to go with this? So I actually took the whole thing apart and cleaned it up and dried it out, because sometimes you get like a bit of sweat and corrosion and stuff there from it. Cleaned it up, dried it out, and then it started to work fine. And now what I do every time after I use the heart rate monitor is I take it apart. Like I just undo the straps and everything else, wipe off the sweat from the surface and stuff, and then I let it to air dry, because I don't want to like just take it off and like throw it in a gym bag or something like that, and then like have all the moisture still build up on it, because it can throw off the readings. So what I do is I literally air dry my heart rate monitor in between workouts, and I found since I've been doing that, I've been getting really accurate readings with it. But the ones at the gym and the machines and stuff like that, I mean, everybody's using them. There's sweat, there's dirt on them. I mean, people are wiping down the machines and stuff like that, maybe using cleaners and stuff. So it could screw up the heart rate monitor on the machines. So bottom line, like, don't put too much emphasis into what that says. What I would recommend, go by your own perceived physical exertion. And this is important even for people who are data geeks. Like you got all the latest data and stuff, like power meters and heart rate monitors and this and that and the other thing. Like still go by perceived exertion. Like you want to have that well-rounded base, right? Because I mean, back in the old days, everybody went by perceived exertion, right? If it felt like you were working hard, you're working hard. If it felt like you're going easy, then you're going easy. And that's surprisingly accurate. So with your cardio, if it feels like you're going easy, then you probably are going easy. If it feels like you're going hard and you're really, cranking it and putting the effort in, then you're putting the effort in, regardless of what the heart rate says, right? So, bottom line, don't get too hung up on the numbers. Focus on the perceived exertion. And if you do want to get more accurate numbers, then you might want to look into a more accurate machine. And again, there's a lot of things out there these days, like a lot of these Fitbit and Apple watches and Garmin watches. They can track your heart rate as well. Or you can get the chest strap chest strap heart rate monitor if you really want to do it good. That tends to be, of all the heart rate monitors, the chest strap one tends to be the most accurate. But again, take a lesson of what I just said there and look after it. Like make sure to take it apart and let it dry out properly and wipe it down in between uses so that it don't start to corrode or get gummed up with sweat and dirt, which can skew the readings of those heart rate monitors. All right, moving on. We got Lee joining in. Says, I've had a blood test recently which showed my cholesterol was quite high. I've started to add more whole grain foods and healthy nuts to my diet. Do you have any more tips? Interesting. With cholesterol, it'd be nice to kind of really get a broader grasp of it all, because one, when it comes to blood tests and cholesterol, how you do the test, when you do the test, whether it was fasted or not, like can really skew it. So you might want to get a couple tests to really make sure that it's like, obviously you're taking some action and proactive measures to improve your cholesterol, which is great. But I would recommend getting another blood test within the next month or so and just kind of double check, because sometimes you can get skewed results with cholesterol because dietary cholesterol can change radically, like in your numbers, and skew it a bit. So I would get another blood test very soon. But as far as what I would recommend as proactive measures to help keep your cholesterol in check, one, activity, like cardiovascular activity is huge, right? I would recommend you get yourself, if you're not doing cardio on a regular basis, do cardio on a regular basis. That's going to help. Just get your heart rate elevated, and that's going to help to just increase blood flow and circulation and help with that. I mean, strength training is great, but getting your cardio up there as well. And I like to do a combination of strength training and cardio. Like I mentioned it before, my yin and yang training system, where I do weight training one day, cardio the next. But I would definitely recommend that and bumping up the intensity there, because it's to build up your cardiovascular endurance, but it also helps to clean out the plumbing, if you will, because the more blood flow and circulation you get, the more you're going to be pumping fresh blood throughout the body and help to minimize cholesterol buildup there. As far as dietary choices, the thing with cholesterol, like even if you eat a very low cholesterol diet, your body manufactures cholesterol, because cholesterol is not bad. Like a lot of people think, oh, cholesterol is bad. You need cholesterol. Like if you didn't have cholesterol, you wouldn't be able to function. You need it. It's essential for survival. It's just, we don't want the cholesterol to build up in the arteries, right? We don't want them to block our arteries, but we actually need the cholesterol itself, because it's important from a hormonal point of view. It's important for cell integrity. I mean, like you just start Google searching, the benefits of cholesterol, and like there's gazillion benefits. Like if you didn't have any, like if you had zero cholesterol in your body, like you would die. Like your cells wouldn't be able to hold their integrity. You wouldn't be able to produce hormones. Like your body needs cholesterol. So it's not the bad guy. It's just, you don't want buildup of cholesterol in the arteries. And simply having cholesterol in the blood doesn't necessarily mean that you have cholesterol built up in the arteries. So it can be a bit skewed. And what's considered high, like the ranges can vary from person to person, is what I'm saying. Like, there's a bit of a gray area there. It's not just a black and white, like, hey, this is good, that's bad. Like there's a lot of shades of gray in between. But more natural whole foods is definitely a way to go. Like focusing on getting adequate fruits and vegetables in there. As far as whole grains, like think of what's called soluble fiber. This is a good one. Like foods like oatmeal is a great source of soluble fiber, because foods that have the high in fiber, especially the soluble fiber, they help to bind to cholesterol and take it out of the system. So like it binds to cholesterol and you basically clean it out in the plumbing, so to speak. So oatmeal should be a staple in your diet on a regular basis. Fruits and vegetables. And if you follow the basic guideline, like that I usually recommend for my coaching students, like protein and veggies with each meal, you should be on the right track for sure, right? Because vegetables, just good, natural, unprocessed vegetables. I mean, and fruits, vegetables and or fruits, right? Having that on a regular basis, there's so many health benefits to it. Like not only is it going to nourish you on the cellular level, but it's going to provide all that fiber and vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and good stuff to help nourish and detoxify your body, and also help keep those things in check. So increase it, and like don't obsess over it. Like just try to be better than you were before. Like that's the secret to making progress with anything. Because a lot of times when people hear stuff like, oh, I got high cholesterol, or I got this, or I got to lose weight, I got to do, they want to have this all or nothing mentality. It's like, I was eating like crap and I wasn't doing anything, and now all of a sudden I'm going to dive headfirst into the deep end and I'm going to change it all overnight, right? All or nothing. It's almost like a light switch, right? I mean, it's either on or off, right? There's no in between. Don't fall into that trap. Like progress, and how you define progress is, are you doing better than you were before? That's it. Like if you weren't eating vegetables before and now you're eating an extra serving of vegetables, even if it's just one meal a day, that's progress. Like just always think of like, how can I make it better than it was before? Better than it was before. And always try to make it better than it was before. And then baby step your way to progress. Baby step your way to change. Because when you try and overhaul everything from day one, a lot of times it's overkill and you can't sustain it. You know, it's sometimes you burn yourself out in the process. And this applies with nutrition. It applies with exercise. It applies with any time you're trying to make a lifestyle change. Small, progressive, and just build it up gradually. This is the way to have sustainable change, where you're building and making these changes, and they're small, subtle changes, but they're significant, but it doesn't feel overwhelming in the process. And that's the whole principle behind the Muscle After 40 Blueprint coaching program that I have, right? When I'm taking guys through these transformations, like we're not going through drastic, like we're not slashing calories and cutting carbs and doing like all kinds of crazy shit that you see people do to try and have the extreme fat loss, you know, the 30-day shred transformation bullshit. Like, no, we're making slow, steady progress, just being better than they were before, and letting those baby steps of progress compound day after day, week after week, month after month. And like by this time next year, you'll be able to look back and say like, holy smokes, look at the transformation that just took place, but it didn't feel overwhelming. And that's the secret to sustainability, is when it becomes just part of you, and it doesn't feel like you're on a diet, or it doesn't feel like you're forcing it. It's just gradual and progressive. When that becomes the new version of you, then it's sustainable. And that's the key to this, because if you go on some crazy extreme diet, right, you start slashing, cutting this out and cutting that out and going super low calorie or cutting out stuff, if it feels like it's not comfortable and it's unsustainable and feels like you're using willpower to force yourself to follow it, that's not going to last. Like willpower is a very finite resource. You can't rely on it. So if you're using willpower to suffer through, it's only a matter of time before you say, screw this, F it, I can't do it anymore. And then you go back to your old eating habits. So that's why we want to avoid using willpower, right? The no willpower diet. That's what we want. We just want to focus on modifying your habits, right? Eating more good foods so that there's less room for the bad foods, and just making these small, subtle changes. So some simple ones that I would start with. 1, daily cardio. Even if it's just getting outside for a walk, even if it's starting with 10 minutes. Like if you're currently not doing cardio, start with 10-minute walks. Just put on your sneakers, walk down the road for 5 minutes, turn around, walk back. Start with that. And then as you build up the momentum, you gradually start to walk further and longer and all this kind of stuff. But just start small, build up the habit, right? Make the habit of getting your ass out the door and doing some cardio. Or when you're out at the gym doing your workouts, like throw in some extra cardio, whether it's extra cardio as a warm up before or extra cardio at the end. But more cardio is going to go a long way. I mean, it'll also improve your overall fitness and aid with fat burning and everything else. But more cardio is a big step right there. And making sure that you're getting fruits and vegetables with every meal, right? And if you can't get solid food, fruits and vegetables for whatever reason, supplement greens powder, right? That's what I do personally. Like if I can't have solid food, fruits and veggies, then I'll supplement with greens. And greens are basically supplemental fruits and veggies. So it's a great way to make sure that you're getting that nutrition that your body needs to help alkalize and detoxify your body and to cleanse it from the inside out. And doing that will make a big difference, and just let that compound. And of course, as far as the whole grains are concerned, really try to get the natural ones. And what I mean by natural, oatmeal is great, sprouted grain breads, things of that nature. Try and avoid the processed whole grains, like, you know, the processed cereals and stuff like that, and try to go for the natural unprocessed stuff. That's why I'm a huge fan of oatmeal, because it's very, you know, it's a good complex carbohydrate. It gives you a lot of sustainable energy. and high in soluble fiber, and it's very little processing, right? It's not full of artificial gunk like a lot of like these quote unquote healthy high fiber cereals, which are loaded with preservatives and crap, right? Like the box cereals that you typically see, even though they market them for adults and stuff like that. There's a lot of processed gunk in there. Whereas if you can get the natural stuff, it'll be much better. So those are a few steps that I would recommend taking. And in a few weeks' time or in a month or whatever, like schedule in for some more blood work and just see, to kind of get some ballpark numbers. Because when it comes to blood tests, it's not a good idea to just take the first test as gospel, but face value, because I mean you could have skewed values depending on different variables within the test. So it's always nice to get a couple to back it up and get more reliable feedback that way. All right, moving on. I know I sometimes ramble on with some of these questions, but hopefully you enjoy them. Usually when I've gotten feedback from people in the past, they actually enjoy it when I ramble on. So hopefully you don't mind when I go into detail versus just giving you a yes or no answer. B Gains DM saying, I just finished squatting, did a 3 times 10, 170 from your 3-day split routine. I'm transitioning to your 4-day split routine next week. What weight range do you feel at point is appropriate for 5x5? So you did 3x10 for 170. Obviously, you're going to be able to lift a bit heavier, but you know what? I wouldn't force it. Like if you want to try like 180 pounds or something like that, but don't go too crazy. Like be conservative with your weights. And even when you're transitioning to different routines, like for example, even if you kept the exact same weight, 170 pounds, and then just transition to 5x5, and if feels good, 5x5, and your form is solid, hey, go 175 pounds for your next workout, and then 180 for your next workout, and then keep building it up by 5-pound increments. And in fact, there would be nothing wrong with actually keeping the same weight as you transition to a lower rep range, because it could serve as a little mini deload, for that first week, because now you're doing lower volume with the same weight. But it would also serve as a time for you to really focus on optimizing your form. Because sometimes when you're pushing a certain weight and you're really pushing it, your form can start to break down a little bit, right? Like maybe you're not going quite as deep with those squats, or maybe, your posture is breaking down or your form is breaking down in certain areas. But if you back off a little bit, sometimes you can solidify that form and then build it back up again. And I've had to do this, and this is something I actually encourage a lot of my coaching students to do, is once you get to the point where your form is starting to break down, because you're training in a progressive overload fashion, but it's inevitable that as you start to add weight, the form is going to suffer a little bit, right? Like even within your workouts itself, like you can probably maintain perfect form with your warm-up weight, and then by the time you're getting to your top heavy working weight, you're struggling a bit and the form isn't quite as good. Like there's a little bit of body English, or the range of motion isn't quite there, or you can't control the weight the same as you could when it's lighter. So it's sometimes nice to do a little back off, really nail down good form and then build it up again. So what I would actually recommend, keep the same weight that you're using right now, switch to the 5x5, have a really strong week. That first week of doing the 5x5, feel strong with the weights, use perfect form, have control over the weights, feel totally confident with every set, every rep, in every range of the motion. Just really own those weights, right, for the first week. And then if that goes good, you're able to complete all the sets and reps on your own, then up it by 5 pounds for the following week, and just keep going through that every week. If you feel good, you're able to complete all the sets and reps on your own, up it by 5 pounds. And then once you get to the point where you're starting to struggle a little bit, either the form is breaking down or you can't get all 5x5, then keep that same weight until you are able to get all 5 sets of 5 with good form by yourself. All right, and then another thing I want to suggest here too, when you're increasing the weights, don't force it. Like a lot of times people get into this, oh, I got to lift heavier. I got to train with progressive overload, right? I got to heavier, push more. I got to get an extra 5 pounds. I got to get extra rep. And when you're trying to force it, inevitably it's going to lead to things going wrong. Like, let your body grow instead of trying to force it to grow. It's a different mindset. Like, just let it grow. Like, be organic with it. Like, focus on, as long as I'm consistent with the training, as long as I'm consistent with nutrition, consistent with good quality sleep, consistent with all the details, all the little things, as long as I take care of all that, it's just going to happen, right? The progress is going to happen, but you can't force it. It's almost like the analogy of growing a vegetable garden, right? Like, I can go out there and I can tend the soil. I can make sure it's getting adequate water, it's adequate sunlight. I can make sure that it's, everything's good and taken care of. Like, I can nurture the plants, nurture the garden, but I can't force the plants out of the ground, right? I can only nurture it to grow. I can't force it to grow. Your body's the same way. Like, consistency with the workouts, consistency with your nutrition, consistency with your hydration and your sleep and your recovery, and keeping your stress levels to a minimum, and avoiding drugs and alcohol and all that stuff. Like, you can nurture the process a lot, but you can't force it, and stop trying to force it. And what you'll find, once you stop trying to force yourself to grow, or force yourself to lose fat, or force yourself to do anything, and you just kind of let it happen naturally, the progress actually happens quicker when you kind of just let go. Like just trust the universe and say, you know what, I'm just going to do the best I can and just let it happen. And then just focus on the habits that are going to lead to the results instead of getting obsessed over the results, right? Just focus on the nurturing it and letting it happen. And then you'll find that the progress actually happens easier and faster, and with less stress and less frustration. Whereas if you're always struggling, like, I see this with guys who are trying to lose weight, for example, like, they're always jumping on the scale. And if they're not losing weight on the scale, they feel bad about themselves, and they create all this unnecessary stress and tension, because, like, oh my God, I've dieted for a whole week, I haven't lost a pound, right? And then they're beating themselves up, and they're creating all this stress and cortisol because they're like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm not seeing any results, What's wrong with me? What's wrong? And they're always so impatient. Whereas if you just, like, screw the results, like, I'm just going to eat healthy, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to take care of myself, I'm going to live a healthy lifestyle, and I'm just going to enjoy the process. And it's like, you do that for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden the results just start to happen. And then it just starts to snowball. And then it just gets easier and easier with less stress and less frustration. Whereas if you're always stressing over the results, sometimes it actually it backfires, and it actually hinders your progress, and it just creates unnecessary stress and tension, and it makes the process go slower. So, like, just let go, trust the process, nurture it along, and let it happen. And you'd be surprised at the difference that you can make. All right, moving on. We have Billy joining in. He says, Big Lee, what's your opinion on intermittent fasting? It depends. It depends on what you're training for, and the situation, and the individual, and blah, 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 blah. There's so many things. There's so many variables in place. Now, I have utilized intermittent fasting myself in the past, and it has worked in the short term, but I don't intermittent fast anymore. Instead, nowadays, I focus on fueling my exercise. I actually addressed this a few questions earlier, where we were talking about eating to fuel your exercise. Meaning, like, if you're doing a high activity day, you're going to eat more. If you're doing a low activity day, you're going to eat less. And that's what I do now. And for anybody who's interested in sports performance, in building muscle, maximizing your strength and your fitness and all that kind of stuff, I would not recommend intermittent fasting. The only time I would recommend intermittent fasting is for someone who's overweight, got a lot of weight to lose, and they want to have an aggressive fat loss, right? Like, you've got a lot of extra meals stored around the midsection. You got rolls and rolls of extra meals that have been building up over the last several years, and you want to tap into burning those, right? If you've got rolls of fat, like you're flat out obese, you could utilize intermittent fasting as an advanced strategy to kind of speed up the process. But even then, I'd be cautious about it, because it kind of has that Band-Aid quick fix solution. It's not always a sustainable lifestyle approach. Now, with that being said, I know some people do get into a fasting lifestyle where they only eat, in a certain feeding window, and it works for them and everything else. And again, it depends on the individual and it depends on your activity level. Like if you're an athlete who's focusing on trying to maximize athletic performance, then training and performing in a fasted state isn't going to work, right? You need to fuel the machine. You need to fuel your training. But if your main goal is just simply burning body fat, then it can work. And this is my real world experience. Like if you just do a search for Lee Hayward intermittent fasting, you'll see some videos that I made on the topic. But I'll just give you a summary of it here. When I started using it, it actually worked really well because simply cutting back the volume of meals or the frequency of meals, it cut back my calorie consumption. So eating less meals, I ate less calories. I was in a calorie deficit. I tapped into burning stored body fat and I lost weight. So it was an easy, simple way to create a calorie deficit, right? Just eat fewer meals. And that worked for a while. But what I found happening was even though I could prolong the fast, like, skip breakfast, skip lunch, and then have dinner and whatever. Like that's usually the way I was going about it. It worked initially, but then I found like I could keep myself busy and occupied throughout the day and just drinking water and I'm drinking coffee and I kind of curbed the appetite that way. And then just as long as I was busy doing chores and errands and work and everything else, I could avoid thinking about food and I was okay. But then as soon as I sat down to eat, right, I took the first bite of food after, a prolonged period of fasting, whatever it happened to be, whether it was, 16 hours or 20 hours or whatever. Like I wasn't super strict on the feeding window. I just, I try to make it a practical, realistic thing. Right. But once I started eating, once I broke the fast, then it was like opening up the floodgates and then I couldn't satisfy my appetite. And I found that I was ending up eating more and more. And what started off as a normal size dinner with my intermittent fasting days, when it worked initially, was becoming a massive dinner. And when you're intermittent fasting, very often people justify making poor food choices because they say, well, I haven't eaten anything all day. I deserve to have that slice of pizza, right? I haven't eaten anything all day. I deserve to have some cake or cookies or desserts or whatever. And it's easy to justify making poor food choices. And that's what I find is this reality for most people who intermittent fast. Because you'd be surprised, like a lot of obese people naturally intermittent fast because they got so much body fat and they're not very active. Like they wake up in the morning and they're not all that hungry and they're not hitting the gym and working out and burning a whole bunch of calories. They just get up and they go to the coffee pot and then they go to work and then they sit behind a desk and, like stuff like that. So a lot of people are naturally doing intermittent fasting. Like most of the people, when I do strategy and coaching calls with people, especially ones who are struggling with losing weight, it's super common for people to say, I don't eat breakfast, right? Because I'm not hungry in the morning. I'll have a cup of coffee and then I'm good to go, right? That tides me over to lunch or even late afternoon, right? Just drinking coffee throughout the day. So they're already doing a modified version of intermittent fasting and they're still obese. They're still overweight and out of shape. So it's not always a good strategy. I would rather focusing on better quality nutrition habits throughout the day, right? Feed the machine, fuel your metabolism, right? Feed the muscle and burn the fat rather than trying to starve the fat. And intermittent fasting is basically a form of trying to starve the fat. So, if you do keep track of the calories and the macros and the food choices and everything else, you can make it work. But, from a practical point of view, I think it would be much better off focus on, having a solid breakfast, lunch, dinner, get your 3 squares in. And I think you'd be much better off than following an intermittent fasting approach. And for me personally, I have breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack before bed. Those are my 4 main staples. And then I will add to that based on the activity that I'm doing that day, right? So if I'm really active, then I'll have extra snacks and workout nutrition thrown in there on top of that. But if it's an easy day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack before bed, that spaces out my food and it allows me to have better nutrition absorption and digestion because I'm not trying to slam back all your protein and calories and nutrients in like 1 or 2 meals, right? Which is really hard on the digestive system. And very often people who follow intermittent fasting, like they're not meeting their protein requirements. They're not getting their nutritional requirements met. They're just basically creating a calorie deficit. So it's like I say, there's pros and cons to it, but I don't do it and I don't recommend it. Like I don't have any of my personal coaching students following intermittent fasting. All right. Love your material. Been following you for over 12 years. Awesome. That's from B Gains. Appreciate the support. Thanks. Chicken leg syndromes. This is from Daughter of Truth. She says, that's a guy that keeps skipping leg days. More likely, military has it right with basic calisthenics and protein. Very often, chicken leg syndrome could be people who are skipping leg days, or it could be genetic as well, right? But a lot of times, you'll see guys want to work the show-off muscles. You know, the chest, the arms, the shoulders, the abs, and legs and back. You know, that kind of gets pushed to the back burner until they get to the point where they realize they're a weak link, and then they're like, "Uh-oh, now I got to do something about it." So that's usually the chicken leg syndrome, and a lot of guys don't want to work legs because it's not the show-off muscle, so to speak. And then vice versa, you get a lot of women, they all they want to work is the legs. They only want to work legs and glutes, right? And they don't care about their upper body. So it's like you want to focus on everything, right? Everything in balance and proportion. John is asking, wondering, as you need more calories for muscle growth, how would I stop getting a 35-inch waist? Well, I was wondering, as you need more calories for muscle, how would I stop getting a 35-inch waist? Well, the size of your waist, I mean, a lot of it's going to be genetic. A lot of it's if you're fat, obviously, you know, the losing body fat can help with that. But it's not just calories. It's quality calories. It's nutrition is what you need, not simply calories. There's a big difference. Like filling up on quality protein and vegetables and essential fatty acids and, you know, good quality carbohydrates to fuel your workouts. That's different than just slamming back calories in the form of like pizza and ice cream and chocolate bars and, and everything else. So it's not calories for muscle growth. It's nutrients for muscle growth. Think of it that way. And you don't need a massive calorie surplus to build muscle. Like that's a big misconception. A lot of people think, well, I got to slam back a huge calorie surplus to build muscle. You just need to eat enough to fuel your training and to recover. Like that's it. And the amount of calorie surplus is so small. A lot of times I actually recommend people to focus on calorie maintenance because more often than not, people underestimate how many calories they consume. So if you strive for maintenance, that'll actually put most people into a slight surplus, and that'll be more than enough to grow from. The big one that I would focus on, getting your protein, getting your vegetables, getting that high nutrient dense food in, and being consistent, and then making sure that you're eating enough to recover from your workouts and to get through your training sessions without feeling depleted. So like you don't want to be going hungry throughout the day. You don't want to be going through a training session and feeling weak and depleted because you're not eating enough food. Like eat enough to fuel the training, and then just making sure that you're getting the nutrients, and you got it covered. Like you don't have to force feed yourself to gain muscle. And that's a big mistake a lot of people make, is trying to force themselves to bulk up, you know, slamming back an extra 1,000 calories a day, thinking, oh, I got to try and force myself to bulk up. I mean, yeah, it'll work for a week or two, right? But then once you fill out your glycogen stores, then the rest is just going to spill over to excess body fat. And yeah, you'll gain weight all right, but it ain't muscle weight, right? It's just pure body fat. I mean, to put things in perspective, if you're gaining a pound a month of lean mass, that's really good progress, right? That's really good progress. If you could put on 10 to 12 pounds of lean mass a year, especially as an adult, that's really good progress. I mean, younger people who like teenagers who are going through puberty and all that stuff, they can probably gain faster because their body's just naturally primed for growth. But someone who's past the puberty days and you're a grown ass man, if you can gain a pound a month of lean mass, that's really good progress. And that's the type of numbers you should be shooting for. So whereas I see a lot of guys, they're trying to gain a pound or more a week. And if you're gaining a pound or more a week, it ain't lean mass. It's just getting fat, right? And I've been there before. I've been guilty of that myself, right? Eating so much and getting fat and then trying to justify it by telling people that I'm bulking up when reality is, no, you ain't bulking up. You're just becoming a fat slob. That's it, right? So if you're gaining more size to your waist than you are to your muscles, then you're eating too much, right? You don't need to have a massive calorie surplus. You need You need a nutrient surplus, and then be consistent with the training. And then, like I mentioned before, nurture the process and let it happen, not trying to force it to happen. How does one manage the axial strain on the spine from heavy compounds like squats, benches, and deadlifts? How do you manage the strain on the spine? One thing is you don't have to do those big exercises every single week, right? Like, and there's a time and a place when you want to do exercises that are not loading your spine. And I've actually, in recent years, have gotten away from heavy squats and benches and deadlifts, and I use a lot of other exercise variations instead. And even for competitive powerlifters, for that matter, there's times when they want to do exercises that are not loading the spine, right? For example, like instead of squats, maybe you're going to do leg presses, or you're going to do hip belt squats, or some other variation that works the muscles without loading the spine. So if you're feeling a lot of strain in your spine from heavy compound lifts, and you've been doing them regularly and really trying to push it, then maybe switch up the exercises for a phase. Like, go a month or two of doing different assistant exercises and movements that are not placing the same load. So some good ones, well, with bench presses, any type of chest press machine or dumbbell bench press, push-ups, dips. You could add weight to your push-ups, add weight to your dips if needed. I mean, those are all great alternatives for bench presses. But the bench press usually isn't one that loads the spine, because your spine is supported on the bench. So that's usually not a big issue. The deadlift, that places a lot of stress on the back, because, the spinal erectors are lifting the weight. So maybe you want to focus on different exercise variations and maybe some lighter weight, higher repetition moves, instead of just pulling like heavy max effort deadlifts. So you can do different variations. And even within the deadlift itself, like if you use a trap bar, that keeps your back more upright and places less strain on the spine versus a barbell in the front. Rack pulls, or even just doing some different back and rowing exercises like chest supported rows and hyperextensions and things where you're still working the muscles but not loading up the spine with a lot of weight. As far as squats, doing exercises where you're not placing the weighted barbell on your back. So leg presses, hip belt squats, if you have access to them. They're becoming more and more popular these days, or you can even make it work with like a landmine attachment at the gym. If you do a search for Lee Hayward hip belt squats, you'll see a video that I made showing a simple variation that you can do with minimal equipment that you should have access to in most commercial gyms. So that would be a good one. And then even like lunges and step ups, leg extensions and leg curls, inner and outer thigh, like still working all the muscles, but not doing heavy squats. Like sometimes you'll find that actually can help, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do to work the muscle without loading up the spine. And this is how you would work around any aches, pains, or injuries, is not getting hung up on the exercise and focusing on working the muscle. And the only time, like, you're looking at those big moves like squats, benches, and deadlifts, I mean, unless you're a competitive power lifter who has to squat, bench, and deadlift, because that's the sport, you don't have to squat, bench, or deadlift. Now, don't get me wrong. I love squats, I love benches, and I love deadlifts, and I've done a lot of them over the years, and they are very effective exercises. But we live in a day and age where we have commercial gyms with tons of different exercises and dozens of movements that you can do for all your major movement pattern or all your major muscle groups. You don't have to squat, bench, and deadlift if they cause pain or discomfort. You can find other exercise variations instead. So, work around it, and don't have this mental block saying, I got to squat, right? If I don't squat, my workout's useless. Like, no, you don't have to squat. Like, there's a lot of pro bodybuilders who have incredible leg development who never squat, right? There's a lot of pro bodybuilders who have massive backs who never deadlift, right? Or like not in the traditional powerlifting sense of deadlifting, right? So, I mean, like, you can still do other exercises to build the muscles, right? It's about being consistent and training the muscle and not getting hung up with the exercise or the movement pattern. All right. Moving on. We have Neil joining in. Says, I saw your video about training outside the warehouse. I can relate as I also train outside the house. I work out at night. I'm a night shift dude. My body cools down faster outside. Is this normal? Yeah, depending on the weather. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's cooler outside, especially in the evenings. So if you are working out outdoors, dress accordingly. Dress according to the weather, right? So I mean, if it's long, like sweatshirt and track pants and stuff like that, just to keep your body warm. And that's actually like a good idea to do in general, unless it's like really hot wherever you're training, like it's sweltering hot. It's a good idea to dress and accommodate the heat. So like for most of the year, when it's cold in the gym, I'll dress in layers. So like I'll have track pants on, I'll have like a hoodie on, and then as I get warm, and I start to work up a sweat, then I can take some of those layers off. Like I can take off my hoodie if I start to get too warm, or I can take off my track pants and have shorts on underneath. So you can dress in layers and accommodate that. But I would much rather you start off your weight training workouts a little on the warm side and then take the layers off versus starting off cold, because when you start off cold, you're more likely to pull or injure or tear something, right? So keep your body warm and err on the side of being a little too warm versus a little too cold, right? That's especially when it comes to strength training. Excuse me. Endurance training is a little different. Like sometimes you'll see endurance trainers like runners and cyclists, they'll sometimes want to start a little on the cool side and then go easy for the first little while to build up their core temperature. Because once your body gets the core temperature elevated, then you're at a nice ideal operating temperature to sustain. And then, of course, it's less crap to have to carry. Like if you bundle up in too many layers, you're on a bike ride and then you got stripped down in layers. It's kind of awkward because you got to carry all that stuff with you. So sometimes in the endurance world, they'll do the opposite, right? They'll start off a little on the cool side and then let their body temperature build up as they go through their warm-up routine, so that by the time they're, into the actual workout portion of it, they're at an ideal operating temperature to sustain it. But when it comes to weight training, it's a different animal, right? And you're more likely to get injured with weight training because the intensity is much higher. The weights and the strain on the body and the joints, the tendons and ligaments is much higher. So I would rather you stay warm, dress in layers, start off warm, and then of course you can always strip off those layers and then you can just throw it in your locker or throw it in the gym bag or whatever. So it's not a big deal that way. So that's what I would recommend for your workouts in general, especially, if it is cool where it is that you're training, which would actually be quite nice. Because lately, I mean, it's been hot. Like it seems like everybody I've been talking to, like when I'm talking to my coaching students and I'm talking to people from different parts of the world, because like I've got coaching students, throughout the United States, throughout Canada, throughout Europe. I got some down in Australia and different parts. And for the most part, like especially throughout the US, Canada, and Europe, like man, it's just been record temperatures. Like everyone's kind of going through heat waves. It's crazy. So yeah, it'd be nice to have a little bit of cool weather for a change, right? It's weird. We always want the opposite, right? If when it's cold, we want it to be warm. When it's warm, we want it to be cool, right? We always want what we don't have. All right, moving on. What else we got there? We have another question here. Good to see you online. Your advice has always been helpful throughout the years. Your genuineness really comes through. Thank you for the plethora of educational videos and content. God bless. I appreciate it. All right, who else we got there? Anthony is joining in. I was diagnosed with golfer's elbow from doing heavy skull crushers 3 months ago, and I still can't heal up from the injury. Have you or anyone else have had the injury on the inner elbow from lifting? Yeah, I've had tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, and basically it's just different forms of tendonitis. Tennis elbows on the outside, golfer's elbows tends to be on the inside. It's just different forms of where the tendons are strained. You don't have to play tennis or golf to experience it. It's just a name, right? Because it's a common injury among golfers or a common injury among tennis players. But anybody who does repetitive movements can experience that. I'm actually going through a bit of strain now. I got carpal tunnels really acting up pretty bad. So that's why I'm wearing this wrist brace. So I go through shit like this all the time. One thing that can help if you can get braces. Now, obviously, this is a carpal tunnel brace, but you can actually get an elbow sleeve or brace to help support the tendons. Tennis elbow, golfer's elbow brace. There's different kinds. One, you can get like a compression cuff, which is just a really tight elastic sleeve that goes around your the meaty part of your forearm and the elbow, which can help to, one, keep the joints and tendons and ligaments warm, but it also provides compression support to help support those tendons. So that may make the workouts a bit more easier and more comfortable. There's another one. I don't have one with me here now, but it's like a U-shaped one. It's hard plastic and is U-shaped, and it cups your the bottom of your elbow, and then it's got a Velcro elastic strap that goes around it. And I like that one because the hard U-shaped plastic brace really provides support on those tendons, in the elbow tendonitis. And then it also has the elastic Velcro strap, which allows it to stretch and move. Because one of the problems with when you have tennis elbow and golfer's elbow braces is if you get ones that are fixed, like some of them you can get, they're just a solid brace and it doesn't expand and contract based on how your muscles are. Because like when you flex your arm, it expands, like when you make a muscle, flex your bicep, like your bicep pumps up. Same with your forearms, right? When you relax your forearm or you tense your forearm, like it swells up. So it's nice to have one with a Velcro, or not Velcro, with an elastic component to it so it can expand and contract, because that way it makes it a lot more comfortable. Because if you have one that's just solid strap, when you flex, it's too tight, and then when you relax, it's too loose, right? So one that has the elastic component can help. But again, look on Amazon for like a tennis elbow or golfer's elbow brace or support, or even compression sleeves. And, you can read the reviews and see what's available. I haven't done any searching for them lately myself. But you can see what's available now and kind of do the reviews and do your own homework. But those can make a big difference, right? The sleeves. Another big thing is just working around the exercises, because what you'll find with tendonitis, certain exercises are going to hurt and cause excruciating pain. And then surprisingly, you might be able to just change your hand position, change the angle, change the width, change the grip, whatever. And then you can do an exercise with no pain whatsoever. Like maybe you'll find, this is one that I used to find with the golfer's elbow. I do a dumbbell curl with a supination where you twist your palm up, hurt like hell. Do a hammer curl with the thumb up, no pain at all. So instead of doing the supination curls, I just do hammer curls, right? And I'll be able to work the exercise, work the movement pattern without aggravating the tendonitis. You might find that with other things. So like what I would recommend, especially when you're working around tendonitis, more machine, more cable exercises, maybe resistance bands, and less free weights. So instead of like a barbell bench press or barbell curls and stuff like that, probably try a chest press machine, or different types of machine exercises at the gym. And the thing I like about the machines is they're on a fixed path, and you just literally have to push or pull against the resistance. So you don't have to balance and support them. So there's less risk of the weight wobbling or twisting and causing unnecessary strain to the tendons. So you'll still be able to work the movement pattern, but do so in a more safe and more controlled fashion. So machine exercises are usually great for this. And play around with different grips, like if you have different handles and hand spacings, like a lot of chest press machines, for example, or row machines, they probably got like a wide grip and narrow grip. They probably got parallel grip, overhand, or you can have an underhand or angled. Play around with all the different hand spacings and see which ones allow you to work the exercise and work the movement pattern without aggravating the tendonitis. And with a little bit of trial and error, you should be able to find some movements that you can do relatively comfortably without aggravating it, and it'll allow you to work around the injury. So you'll still be able to keep yourself active, still be able to work out and be consistent without causing aggravated injury. And then, of course, if anything does hurt, don't do it, right? Either scrap the exercise or try and find an alternative to that exercise. Like I mentioned, like when I got golfer's elbow, I can't do a regular bicep curl with palms up, but I can do a hammer curl. So I do that instead. Or maybe I'll be able to do a reverse curl with the palms down, but like just changing that movement pattern. So instead of palms up, I got either a thumbs up or palms down. Now I can actually do the curl and I can still work the muscles, still get some exercise benefit without aggravating the tendonitis. So that's what you need to do. You need to work around it the best you can. And some of these injuries, the tendonitis and stuff, it can take weeks or months for it to go away, like, or to at least subside. Like, it'll probably always flare up. Like, I've had tennis elbow and golfer's elbow flare up multiple times over the years. And when it does flare up, at least I know what to do to minimize it and to let it heal up on its own. And the big thing that can help as well is when you're doing your exercises, always try and think of working things in balance and proportion. Because a lot of times the root cause for any tendon issues is overworking one side of the joint compared to the other. So like doing more bicep work than tricep work, or doing more chest work than back work, more front delt than rear delt. So always think of working agonist and antagonist, basically opposing movement patterns. And this is something that I do in my workouts these days, especially where I do like total body workouts. I'll do a chest press, and then I'll do a back row. I'll do an overhead press, and then I'll do an overhead pull. So like shoulder press, lat pull down, chest press, seated row, bicep curl, tricep extension, leg curl, crunches, hyperextensions. Like, I always work opposing movement pattern, like inner and outer thighs, like everything. I work opposing movements, and I usually work them back to back. So if I do an exercise for front delts, I want to follow it up with an exercise for rear delts. And always thinking of working opposing movements and opposing sides with equal volume. So I'm doing an equal amount of pressing and pulling for all muscle groups. And I find when you train that way, in balance and proportion, it really helps to minimize a lot of the repetitive strain that you get and these aggravations, tendonitis and things like that, because you're working opposing movements in equal balance. Whereas if you get into the habit of doing more of one than another, like a lot of beginners, right? They want chest and biceps, right? So they'll do a ton of chest work and they'll do a ton of bicep work, and they'll neglect the triceps and they'll neglect the back and everything else. And yeah, it works for a little while, but then you start to see the repetitive movement strain creeping in after a while, right? Because things are getting out of balance. So that's an advanced strategy, is always think of working everything in balance and proportion. And that'll help to minimize your risk of injury and just to make your body more proportionate and more mobile all around. All right, I'm going to get ready and clue this up, guys, because I've been going way too long. I always do. Right? I always say I'm going for an hour, and I go way the heck longer than an hour. That's just me. What else we got there? I'm 41 years old, having trouble training every muscle twice per week, doing push-pull legs, always like chest, tries, back, shoulders, but it's frowned upon to do low frequency. Forget it, man. Like this from Nick. Like, if you can't train every muscle group twice a week, then friggin' do it once a week, or do it. Just don't get hung up into the status quo, thinking I've got to hit every single muscle group twice in a 7-day time frame. Like, who gives a shit? Like, your muscles don't have a calendar built into them, thinking, well, like, if I don't get worked twice within 7 days, I'm not going to grow. Like, the muscles just know stress, recovery, and that's it. Like, there's no calendar, there's no timeline, there's no nothing, right? So stop following like Joe Blow, fitness influencer on Instagram or on YouTube, says, hey, dude, you got to do push-pull legs twice a week, 6 days a week, blah, blah, right? Go hard or go home. Like, frig off. If you can't fit in hitting every muscle group twice a week, then do every muscle group once a week, or maybe space it out. So like, okay, I'm doing push, pull, legs, push, and then I'll continue the rest of the cycle the next week. Like, operate on you can broaden your horizons. You don't have to try to squeeze everything into 7 days. Like, maybe have a 10-day rotation where you hit everything twice over the course of 10 days or something like that. Like, with my workouts, I don't give a shit what day of the week it is. I don't give a shit. Like, I just go through an order of workouts. That's it. I've got a few workouts that I do, and I'm just going to go through those workouts in the order of those workouts, regardless of the day of the week, regardless of how many workouts I got done that week or whatever. Like, I don't care. I just go through them in an order. And if it takes me 2 weeks to get all those workouts done, so be it. It takes me 2 weeks. If I can get them all done in a week, then so be it. Like, I don't care. As long as I'm good enough, but good enough consistently over the long term, that's all that matters. And like, don't get hung up in all these stupid rules, which really don't mean nothing other than satisfying your need for detail. Like, again, your muscles don't have a calendar built in, right? It's not like they're gonna, oh, I'll grow if I get work twice within 7 days. But if you don't get it all done within 7 days, then I'm not gonna grow. Like, no, it's just stress, right? And they respond to the stress, and then they rest, recover, and grow, and then you start the whole stress process again. I mean, there's no timeline built in there. All right, so just let go of that. Right, the calendar was a human invention. Right, muscles are older than that. They're way more intelligent than that. Right, so you don't get hung up in these push pull legs twice a week guidelines. Like back in the old days, in the early days of strength training, everybody did total body workouts, and the standard was 3 days a week total body workouts. Right, like, and that's pretty much what I do now. I'm gone back to that because I find it works. But if I don't get it all done, like if I miss a day here and there, and it takes me longer than that to get my 3 total body workouts in, I don't care. Like, it's good enough consistently, right? Think of the big picture, right? That's all that really matters. So don't stress over stupid little details like that. And with that being said, I'm going to get ready and clue it up. All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video chat. I certainly enjoyed doing them. And what I'll do is I'll have the replay of this one posted up over the course of the weekend with the timestamps and all that good stuff. And if there's anything that you would like to discuss, whether we want to elaborate on some of the things we've already talked about during our chat here today, or maybe you have any questions that I didn't cover, feel free to reach out to me. You can email me, and have my email address down in the description below. Friend me up over on Facebook if you haven't already done so. If you're active over on Facebook, friend me up. I got my Facebook link in the description below as well. It's Lee Hayward. So facebook.com/Lee.Hayward. That's my Facebook profile. And we can chat through there, or we can chat through email. And if you'd like some help with a customized fitness and nutrition program, let me know. We could even book in for a strategy call and have a chat and see if we can come up with a realistic action plan to help you reach your fitness and fat loss goals. So in the meantime, have yourself a fantastic weekend, and I will talk to you next week. Same time, same place. Take care. Over and out. Cheers.